we'll go ahead and get started then. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first event on this year's Welcome Week with Phelps County University of Missouri Extension. Welcome Week is our 5-day virtual open house here in Dent, Phelps, and Crawford County. And we hope you'll take advantage of our free programs offered daily to become familiar with the resources available to you from the University of Missouri. At the end of today's program, please take the opportunity to subscribe to the Phelps County Extension YouTube page, the various County Extension Facebook pages, or our very informative newsletters available at the Extension County websites. My name is Rachel Buteman, and I'm a dietitian with the University of Missouri. I provide community health education on nutrition, physical activity, stress management, and building health supportive environments. One of my favorite nutrition topics is the Mediterranean diet. So if you ever want to talk Mediterranean diet, give me a call. That's one of my favorite conversations. I also want to introduce my co-host, Jean Day. Jean is a nutrition program associate who also teaches nutrition and physical activity classes in our county. So in today's class, we will spend about 30 minutes working our way through the subject of implementing food safety practices when selecting, transporting, serving, and saving food from our picnics or other outings with our families. Along with lecture, today's class will include group activities and a video cooking demonstration. I ask that everyone participate in the group activities to add to the learning value of the class. In today's course, those are some of the Facebook links and YouTube links I previously mentioned. Have to catch up with my own PowerPoint, that happens sometimes. But in today's class, we will be reviewing the 4 steps of safe food handling. Explore the components and use of equipment needed to transport food safely. And at the end, develop a plan to guide your food service next time you bring your family out for a picnic or other outing. Foodborne illness is common, costly, and yet preventable. And yet a preventable public health problem. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that 1 in 6 Americans get sick from contaminated foods or beverages each year, including 3,000 deaths as a result. Foodborne illness is any disease caused by consuming contaminated food or drink. There are more than 250 individual causes of foodborne disease, but they generally fall into one of 3 contamination categories. Biological is one of them, and it's one of the most common, including living organisms which live in or are transported on foods, such as viruses, bacteria, fungi, and parasites. Chemical contaminants are non-food safe substances which can cause us harm when ingested, such as pesticides on food surfaces, cleaning detergents that end up in our work environments, and toxins produced in foods from bacteria and some sea life. Physical contaminants are any physical material in food that does not belong in the product. These can include metal shavings, glass, bones, or plastic, and they can all result in oral injury if ingested. Let's take a moment to identify contaminants you may encounter at home when packing your picnic. This is an interactive activity, so please feel free to unmute yourself to answer my brief question. Mold is a type of fungus which occurs on foods when they're in a moist, dark environment. Molds can cause respiratory problems, and in the case of certain grains, produce a mycotoxin, which is a chemical contaminating poison in foods. You may find mold on produce and bread products when you pack for your personal picnic. I don't know, I might have given away the answer, but can you tell me then, if you've been paying attention, what type of contaminant would mold be? Does one of us have our, yeah, I think mine's.
Biological.
Biological, very good. So what I was checking there is that I had the sound on my computer on so I could hear your answers, but I think we got it. Okay, good. So yes, mold is a biological contaminant. If food is covered in mold, don't sniff it. This could cause a respiratory problem. Be sure to discard it. You should put the food in a small paper or plastic bag and toss it out so that children or pets cannot get access to it. Additionally, you need to clean the area where the mold has been. So the refrigerator or the cabinet needs to be properly cleaned and sanitized. Additionally, check any food that's been adjacent to the moldy product. Fruits and vegetables especially are very good at passing mold from product to product. If you do have a fruit or vegetable that has mold, if it's a very firm fruit or vegetable, like a cabbage, carrot, or bell pepper, you can actually cut off the infected part and still use the rest. So you'll want to cut with at least a 1-inch margin, ensuring your knife doesn't come into the mold contaminated area and therefore cross-contaminate those spores anywhere else on the product. We can cut a firm piece of produce because it has less moisture and it's denser. So the mold isn't able to penetrate into that dense food. Jane used this wonderful image I really enjoyed. So if you imagine mold, it's not just the visual fuzzy or off-color component we see. They also have tendrils that penetrate into the food that we can't visibly see with the naked eye. And so for dense foods, they aren't able to penetrate, but for soft foods, they are. So soft produce like peaches, cucumbers, and tomatoes, they're more moist and they're softer. So the mold can penetrate deep into them where we can't see. So we would discard the softer foods. We can cut on the firm foods. Bakery products like breads count as a soft food and need to be discarded in their entirety. All right, here's another contaminant for you. Chipped fingernails. Fingernails can break and they can fall into food we are preparing. What type of contaminant would a fingernail be?
Physical.
Exactly, physical. So as a physical contaminant, we want to limit this by keeping fingernails short and clean and avoid other physical contaminants like nail polish, which can easily chip off of nails. All right, and what about bug spray or insect repellent? I'm sure you'll be with me in advising that we shouldn't be using bug spray close to our food preparation and service areas. We want to do that a distance away. What type of contaminant would bug spray be?
Chemical.
Chemical, thank you, perfect. So a small ingestion of bug spray that you get from inhaling as you're spraying your legs isn't going to cause much of an issue, little to none. But if we were to inhale or ingest a significant amount of bug spray, it can have a negative reaction. We can have shortness of breath, irritation of the nose and throat, and also potential vomiting. As with any chemicals, we want to store and use them away from the food preparation site. If we do end up ingesting a chemical, we have access to the Missouri's Poison Control Hotline, which is 1-800-222-1222, appearing in the upper right of your screen now. Jean made a great point earlier that there's certain members of our population that are at higher risk for all of these contaminants, whether biological or chemical. These include the elderly, the very young, the immune suppressed, and pregnant women. So as we think about our diverse age groups in our families and different points of life, we want to be careful when preparing our food to keep them safe. So when we go out for a picnic, there's certain things that we are aware of and certain things that we avoid. So one thing we often see at a picnic is ants. And what do we do when we find ants? We avoid them. We move the cloth. We go to a different table because nobody wants them crawling all over them. But there's also certain things at a picnic that we can't see or smell or taste, but we want to take action to try to avoid them. These are bacteria, as an example. Bacteria grow very quickly at Temperature ranges between 40 degrees Fahrenheit to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, of which Missouri daytime temperatures falls in the middle. So when we are picnicking outside, we need to take certain precautions to decrease the growth of bacteria. These include following 4 simple steps to make our food safer: cleaning, separating, cooking, and chilling. Let's look into these now. So when we're cleaning, we need to wash hands, utensils, and surfaces often. Illness-causing germs can survive in many places around the kitchen, including your food, hands, utensils, and cutting boards. Wash your hands right away before you start cooking and at several other times in the cooking process. Everyone can say it with me. When you wash your hands, you need hot soapy water. You need to scrub the backs between your fingers, under your nails for at least 20 seconds, or humming the happy birthday song twice. We're all pretty good at that just at the moment. But remember to do it not just when you're entering the house or leaving the house or have touched something from the outside world, but also when you're prepping your food. We need to do it before, during, and after preparing food, after handling raw meat, poultry, seafood, and their juices, as well as uncooked eggs, before we eat, when we use the toilet or help a child use the toilet, or when we're caring for pets, such as petting them, feeding them, cleaning them up after them. They can carry a lot of bacteria. Additionally, if we touch the garbage can, or before and after helping someone who is sick and may have a significant amount of bacteria on them as well. If you cut yourself, you need to wash your hands before treating the wound and after treating the wound, as well as if you cough, sneeze, or have to blow your nose. In addition to keeping our hands clean, we need to clean our environment. This includes our cutting boards, dishes, utensils, and countertops with hot, soapy water, especially after they've held raw meat, poultry, seafood, or eggs. Make sure your dishcloth is clean and that you're washing it in the hot cycle of your washing machine to help sanitize it between uses. When it comes to the food itself, we should wash produce like fruits and vegetables. We can wash them under running water after we've cut away any damaged and bruised areas. We do not have to use soap, bleach, or produce washes that are produced commercially. Water is what you want to use for your fruits and vegetables. If you have a firm fruit or vegetable like a cucumber or a melon, you can use a designated produce brush to scrub it clean if you have a lot of built-on dirt. To note though, we do not want to wash our proteins. So if you have a chicken or other meat product, please don't wash it in the sink. You're really contaminating your environment. Any bacteria on the surface of that meat product will splash off with the water and land all over your kitchen, contaminating all of the surfaces. So don't wash the meat. Yes, wash the produce. Our third step is to separate so we don't contaminate. Our second step, rather, is to separate so we don't contaminate. And we start this at the grocery store. Right as you're buying your raw meat, poultry, and seafood products, separate them in your grocery cart to one side, away from the rest of your ready-to-eat food. Continue this when you check out to put them in a separate grocery bag, and when you get home to place them in a separate part of the refrigerator. Their juices don't contaminate your other foods. When you're preparing them, use one cutting board for fresh produce and other ready-to-eat foods, and another one for raw meat, poultry, or seafood. Be sure to check your cutting boards and replace them when you need to. Any large ruts, cuts, or dents in your cutting board is an easy way to attract and hold dirt and bacteria. So make sure your items you're using are clean and in good repair. You'll need to use separate plates and utensils for your cooked versus your raw items when you're preparing and serving your food, and wash them thoroughly. All cutting boards, utensils, and plates that have touched raw meat, poultry, and seafood need to be properly washed with hot soapy water and sanitized before you use them again. Third step, cooking to the right temperature. This is very important. Food is safely cooked when internal temperatures are high enough to kill germs that can make you sick. Use a food thermometer to be sure your food is safe. When you think your food is done, place the thermometer into the thickest part of the meat. making sure not to touch any bone, fat, or gristle, which can give you a false reading. Refer to the minimum cooking temperatures for your particular food item. Once you've cooked your food, you want to keep it hot above 140 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're not serving the food right away, you need to keep it out of that temperature danger zone of 40 to 140 by using a heat source like a chafing dish, warming tray, or slow cooker. Our final step is to chill. This is refrigerating and freezing foods properly. We need to refrigerate perishable foods within 2 hours. Bacteria that can cause food poisoning multiply quickest between 40 and 140, that temperature danger zone. Your cooler should be maintained at 40 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, and using an appliance thermometer, a small thermometer about this big that can hang inside your refrigerator or in your cooler, is one of the easiest ways to make sure you're meeting that goal. Never leave perishable foods out of the refrigeration for more than 2 hours. If the food is exposed to temperatures above 90 degrees, like say most Missouri days, that food can only sit outside of the cooler or refrigerator for 1 hour before you discard it. Cold picnic foods need to be cooked ahead of time so that you have plenty of time to thoroughly chill them in the refrigerator before you pack them up in your cooler. Using a shallow dish or container can help them cool faster in the refrigerator, and using an insulated cooler with sufficient ice or ice packs can help them stay cool to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll want to pack them directly from the refrigerator into the cooler instead of letting them hang out on the counter while you're packing up everything else, which gives them a time to heat up before you put them in the cooler. Now that we've discussed those 4 steps of food safety, let's look at the equipment we're going to need. I'm going to move my camera so that you can see the equipment we have today. Okay. This is Jean, if you haven't seen her previously. So the equipment, I need to switch my camera one more time to make myself a little bigger here. Now, how's that? That might be easier to see. The first piece of equipment we're introducing you to is the cooler itself. You'll need some kind of insulated bag or a cooler to carry your items to keep them cold. A cooler is beneficial because it's an insulated box, which prevents the transfer of heat from outside in the environment into the internal environment where you're keeping your food. Some more expensive coolers will have foam or foil-based insulation, but a lot of them, including this model, uses an air gap insulation between the external and internal layers. That insulation prevents the convection of heat, as I just said, from the outside environment to the inside, and vice versa. Another quality you want in your cooler is a tight lid. It should be slightly hard to open. The benefit of that tight lid is better insulation. So less cold air is escaping and less hot air is coming in. Okay, so there's a couple of tips you can use to keep your cooler colder longer. The first is to pre-chill your food. So as we mentioned with cold foods, always store them in the refrigerator. If you can bring up the contents of everything going into your cooler to that 40 degrees or lower, it's going to stay cold a lot longer because they'll be able to self-cool. Second, fill your cooler full. You'll want to add as much content into your cooler as you can. That's because heavy, full items, whether it's food, ice, water, stays colder longer than air does. So if you have 50% of your cooler full and 50% full of air, as soon as I open the cooler, that 50% cold air escapes and 50% warm air takes its place, which then heats up the rest of your cooler. In contrast, if I have 80% of the cooler or the cooler completely full, it's staying much colder. Suggestion is to if you have a lot of food, fill your cooler 80% full of food and finish filling the rest of it with ice. If you have less food, use ice to fill in the additional space. All right, so when you are transporting your cooler in your car, put it in the air-conditioned portion. It's tempting to load it all in the back of the truck, the back of the trunk, but that's not doing the best service to your food. You want to put it in the environment that's going to keep it as cold as possible. So if you're comfortable in the cab of the car, at a one,
will be too.
your cooler will be too. The cooler is your new friend. Maybe that's the slogan we should use. Be nice to your friends.
Our food safety friend.
Food safety friend. All right. Also, when we're packing that cooler, you want to use ice throughout. You likely want to put some on the bottom, but you definitely want to put some as your topmost layer. This is because just like in a hot summer house, where do we go when it's hot? The same thing is going to happen in your cooler. Cold air from the ice you put on top will sink down to the bottom and cool food all throughout. In contrast, if we only have ice on the bottom of the cooler, it won't as effectively bring that cold air up to the top. So your uppermost layer will not be as effectively cooled. Also, don't drain the water. So after a while, some of that ice is going to start to melt and you're going to have a puddle or a lake in your cooler. You may be tempted for neatness sake to drain all that out, but don't. Just as we mentioned, solid objects hold cold temperature better than air. So like we think about the ocean or a lake, they stay and hold their temperature longer than the air around it. The water in your cooler will stay cooler longer than just the air that takes up the space when the water is removed. Additionally, pack with a purpose. So maybe we talked about a convenience station. You have a full ice chest there. You open it up and you're staring and all the cold air is escaping from the refrigeration unit as you decide what iced tea you want. We don't want that to be the impact of our cooler. So we don't want to open the cooler and dig all the way to the bottom for that iced tea. Instead, we want to pack with items we're going to use first on top and the items we're going to use last on the bottom, way down there. If we know we're having, say, popsicles, we can put that frozen popsicle all the way at the bottom for dessert. Additionally, one of my best advice for coolers is actually to have more than one. So like we talked about with opening that refrigerator door for the beverages, we don't want to do that every time we want a cold drink. We don't want to expose our raw meat products or our dairy products or our fresh fruit to that same hot air. Instead, use a different cooler for your beverages. And I actually prefer to have a small cooler specifically for my raw meat products.
It keeps them separate and then you know they're separate. You know.
Absolutely. So that second principle of our 4 tips to food safety: separate, don't cross-contaminate. If they're not in the same cooler with my fresh produce, they're very much less likely to spread juices and bacteria. So those are my cooler tips. The next equipment we'll talk about is our ice packs. There's several great options when it comes to ice packs, and really they perform rather similar. This is a plastic bag ice pack that when you freeze, it'll become solid. And this is great for keeping your freezer cool, your cooler cool. There's also hard models of various sizes. Other uses is, of course, cubed ice. You can buy from the gas station or from the local grocery store. That is really effective as a coolant in your cooler. Or you can make your own ice packs using a milk jug that's been cleaned out well, filled with water and frozen, or a water bottle. Small water bottles are useful in fitting in between all the nooks and crannies of your food products to really fill your cooler densely. But when it comes to melting, the bigger the ice pack, the longer it's going to stay frozen. So a big ice pack like this will stay frozen longer than a small one like Gina's. So if you have room in your cooler, say it's only a small number of you eating, having a frozen milk jug will keep everything cooler longer than a few individual water bottles. But if you have individual small ice packs, that's fine. You're just going to need more of them to create that dense, full cooler.
And be sure if you're freezing like a water bottle, be sure it is something like a water bottle. That's a food safe plastic. It does make a difference. I don't want to make any, I don't know what people might try to use to put in their cooler, but an empty water bottle, an empty 20-ounce bottle would be okay as long as it's a food safe package.
Absolutely. One other thing to try when making your own ice packs at home is you can get a slightly colder homemade ice pack if you create a solution instead of just plain water. You can do that easily by putting 1 tablespoon of salt in for every cup of water. And that ice pack will then have to freeze at a lower temperature, but it'll also melt slightly slower than traditional water. Okay, so our next piece of equipment is our containers. Our food containers are important because eventually ice melts in the cooler and you end up with cooler soup. And we don't want soggy food products. So you want to find containers which are watertight. The best way to test if your containers are watertight is to see if they're airtight. So you can take a container you want to try when it's empty and clean and submerge it in water in the kitchen sink. Once it's submerged, you'll gently press on the sides and watch for any air bubbles to escape. If there's a stream of air bubbles, that's not airtight and it likely won't be watertight and you're going to have soggy whatever you put in that container.
And whatever has been on the hands of the people that have reached in your cooler will then be in there too, which is what we're trying to avoid.
Absolutely. So that's that clean issue as well as that contamination issue. Some good options for some sealable containers include zipping baggies, plastic bags. They're really great. I actually use these a lot when we're talking about those raw food products. I like to unseal my raw meat products in a sealable bag, and it's easy for me to see if there's juices and if I need to keep them upright or adjust otherwise. Additionally, you can be environmentally friendly by using glass containers. Again, just take the time if you're using any sort of glass Pyrex containers or canning jars to make sure you have a tight seal. Canning jars are nice because they seal up really well if you have a good new ring, but any kind of Pyrex will work too. Just double check your lids are airtight so we don't get that seepage. All right. So one other tip is when we're talking about those containers we're using for those raw meat products, I like to make sure mine are distinguishable in some way because picnics are busy and I don't want them to get confused. So if you imagine this was my raw food container, I emptied it, I made my hamburgers, I set it down over here. About an hour and a half later, it's time to pack up. And Jean wants to help me. She may take that same container and now put my cooked hamburger patties back in. And why would that be an issue?
Because we just never, ever, ever want to put anything in a container that had a raw meat product. We know there's microbes on the food. Processors work extremely hard to limit the numbers, but there are microbes in the air. There are microbes on food. If we put a cooked product back in here, we've cross-contaminated it. We've destroyed those microbes by cooking appropriately. And so we want to keep those cooked foods in a different container so that they remain food safe.
Absolutely. So for that reason, I like to distinguish the containers I'm using for raw products from otherwise. You can do that with a sticker, a Sharpie, or maybe color coordination, depending on what you have at home. Okay, my next thing to talk about is sanitizers. So anytime we're getting out our equipment to use for a fresh day of picnicking, we want to wash and sanitize it. Maybe you're on the ball and you cleaned it as soon as you got home from the last picnic, or maybe you're like me and you're tired and it's a little bit less clean, but might as well clean it again. So we do need a wash before we sanitize. Washing includes using hot soapy water to clean out all the visible debris. So use my hot soapy water here and I wipe out the entirety of the cooler, making sure to get any visible debris and dirt out of the way. This gives me a clean and open surface area to then apply my sanitizer. I can use a approved sanitizing wipe. This is a disinfectant wipe, which specifically says on the label that it's effective for food service areas. Additionally, you can use a bleach solution of 3 tablespoons of bleach to a gallon of water to wipe down and then allow it to air dry. This will decrease contamination from your food service equipment to your food itself. So with sanitizers, remember that you want to wash, rinse, and sanitize. If we're at the picnic site and we want to reuse utensils, you need to bring equipment to allow for this. You need to bring the hot soapy water with you, a bucket to rinse, and then a bucket for that bleach-based sanitizer. Sometimes it's easier just to bring extra utensils instead of bringing the entire sink system with you. And honestly, that's my preferred method. I'm an excess packer for utensils because I don't like to wash at the picnic site. Okay, plates. We need to bring enough plates for everyone present, but also enough plates to cut down on contamination. So in that scenario we were talking about earlier, where me and Jean are cooking hamburgers, if I were cooking my hamburgers over here, I'm taking my hamburger patties off of this plate, putting them on the grill and cooking them. After a while, I may get absent-minded and this burger's done. I need somewhere to put it. I may put it back on the same plate, but luckily Jean's here to stop me because there's those microbes and bacterial juices. So you need to bring 2 plates, one for cooking off of and one for serving on for anything you're cooking on site. Additionally, for the same reason, you need to bring extra utensils. One, things get dropped on the ground very commonly, and unless you're bringing your entire sanitation sink with you, it's better just to get out a nice clean one that hasn't been on the ground and picked up all kinds of microbes. Additionally, you don't want to use the same serving utensil you use to handle your raw meat as in your finished product, and you need a serving utensil for each dish. So you want one for the potato salad, for the lettuce salad, and the tomato salsa instead of scooping from each one with the same dish. That's a cross-contamination issue. All right, just 2 more pieces of equipment to show you. The next one I'm showing you is our ice trays. Ice trays are useful if we will be featuring a chilled item from the cooler, but putting it on something like a picnic tabletop for a while. So you take a shallow dish like this and fill it full of ice on the bottom. You would want actual cube ice, so placing it on top of an ice pack is an option, but the benefit of cube ice, as Jean was explaining before,
You can see that it's still ice. At the point, whatever size ice you bought at the convenience store or got from your ice maker or pushed from trays, some of us still do that, you can see it in your ice bath. And when those pieces are smaller, you know that you either have to add ice to your ice bath or you need to get that food put away or thrown away. That it's a visual cue that your ice is melting. So whatever the environmental heat from your warm summer day that's melting that ice is also raising the temperature of your food. And the ice, when it's melted, doesn't protect your food.
absolutely. So once we have that layer of ice down in our shallow pan, we put the serving dish of the food on top. This helps to keep that food slightly colder. We are aiming to keep it at 40 degrees, but that likely won't happen out of a hot summer day. Instead, we're just keeping it slightly chilled, decreasing the rate of growth of that bacteria, decreasing the risk of foodborne illness. Now, we still would need to dispose of this food within our disposal time limits. So if it's a very comfortable Missouri day, well, you better do it now. It's going to get hot pretty soon. And if it's below 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you could serve this for up to 2 hours. But if it's a more typical Missouri summer day or above 90 degrees, this could be served for 1 hour. One tip, if you have a big batch of potato salad, pasta salad, because you have a lot of people at your picnic and you're going to be serving it for multiple hours, try bringing it in small container batches and serving it in batches. So Jean described this when we were talking before.
If you read that whatever is left in the bottom of this bowl is getting warmer all the time. So you're better off to have 2 or 3 containers, make that big batch of potato salad. But when this is looking scruffy, and you know what I mean, get a whole nother container out to put there. Gives you a great time to check your ice to see how many cubes you have left, put more ice in there, and bring out a smaller container. If you split your big batch into 3, you may not have to worry or even ponder or look at your watch if your 3rd container is still in the cooler when you're packing up. You know it's still food safe and you can eat it at home. We don't have to look at that and say, how long has that been out? Can we take that back to, can we take it home? Can we take that back to the office? If it's in here, you don't have to worry about it. And it will still look nicer. That, you know, people who are halfway through your family don't feel like they have to scrape.
Better quality and less food waste because you're doing it in batches, so not your entire container of food is exposed to the elements at once. Instead, it's safely in your cooler that you're checking with that thermometer is 40 degrees or less. Okay, our last advice for you for equipment is to have a separate bin or tote for all the dirty, contaminated utensils and bowls you're accumulating throughout the day. So this is those same issues we talked about with the designated raw meat Tupperware or plate. When you know it's contaminated and dirty and you don't want anyone else using it, go ahead and have a separate tote or bin to put those dirty dishes in. It helps keeps everything organized and prevents cross-contamination. All right, that's all the equipment we brought with us. Jean does have one other thing to feature though as a recommendation.
Well, we talk about physical hazards, and we talked about chemical that can get into your food. And we use bug sprays because of bugs. You can use this is a screen. You can use a physical barrier so that you don't have to have as much bug spray around. You can maybe keep the bug spray in the grass where people are doing sports or playing or laying on a towel. And you can use a screen device or cloth to keep the insects off of your food. Because we know flies walk around on all sorts of stuff that we don't want to be part of our lunch. But these are not expensive, and this is a metal one, so it's durable. So give it a try if you see one. Consider taking it for your picnic, or at least keep the lid handy so that you can keep unwanted visitors away from your food.
Great. And if you're able to stay with us for a few more minutes, we'll finish up with an interactive activity in which we go through a guide for how you can plan your food service operation for your next picnic. Okay, so we'll go through this together. We're going to start by choosing the menu for our picnic. When we're choosing the menu for our picnic, we want to use the guidelines for a healthy meal. The My Plate is a great example for this. The My Plate is a model based on your average 9-inch dinner plate, which includes our basic food groups of fruits, vegetables, grains, proteins, and dairy. We want half our plates to be filled with fruits and vegetables, about a quarter to be filled with grains, emphasizing whole grains, a quarter to be lean proteins, and then a great dairy source to get that vitamin D and calcium we need on a daily basis. We can incorporate all types of healthy recipes for this. Here's one I recommend. It's a combination of whole grains and great vegetables.
It's called Zesty Veggie Pasta Salad. It calls for a half pound of whole wheat or regular pasta in any shape. That's about half of this box. I was concerned about keeping cold foods cold, so I cooked my pasta on the stove yesterday. There are types of pasta that you can cook in the microwave. I have a lot of kitchen tools at my house. Other people don't. But if you have like a large glass dish, there are styles of pasta that you can cook in the microwave if you don't want to do it on your stove, which can be good during the summer when we don't want to heat our kitchens. Our recipe calls for 1 cup canned fresh or frozen vegetables, cooked and cooled. And these are frozen. It's frozen California mix because it's what I already had in my freezer. Later in the summer, we're going to have garden produce, and we'll be a little more free to leave our houses. And so you'll have a lot more options for making the vegetables in your zesty veggie pasta salad. Right now, I'm gonna walk over to the sink and I'm gonna run some water over these frozen vegetables so that they will mix into the salad and not stay frozen when it's served. I have rinsed the vegetables that were frozen. If you purchased fresh produce, that's great. We want to wash that with water before we cut it, just water. If it's a vegetable with a hard rind, you do want to scrub it with a brush, but just water. Our recipe calls for a cup of salad dressing. I've measured a half cup, just because whenever I fixed this recipe before, I've ended up with about half a cup of salad dressing in the bottom of the container when we were finished eating it. I'd rather leave that other half cup in the bottle so we can eat it another day. Now, this recipe is a framework recipe. I picked California Mix and Zesty Italian because that's what I had. Now, I have made this salad with a bag of Asian mixed vegetables and sesame garlic dressing. I have made this salad with corn and black beans and chipotle ranch. And so you can fix what your family will like or what will go with the rest of your picnic. And you stir that together and it's really simple. We hope you enjoy your food safe picnic and stop by the extension office for more information. Thank you.
So that's one great recipe you can incorporate into planning your picnic. In general, when we're planning our picnic, we want to include foods from each food group, allowing for one recognized portion size recommended at a given meal for each person attending. So let's talk through some options now. If you want to unmute yourself, you're absolutely encouraged to. What kind of vegetable could we bring on a picnic? Some recommendations could be corn on the cob, cucumber salad, or cut vegetables with hummus.
Maybe like carrots and celery and broccoli and cauliflower just cut up and you can eat it raw.
Delicious, love it. Perfect. What's some fruit we can bring? An example that would work well for a picnic could be fruit cups or whole fruit, frozen berries, or cold sliced melon.
Frozen grapes.
Okay, what could be a whole grain? You can find whole grains in buns and breads. We just got a great recipe for a pasta salad that uses a whole grain penne, whole grain noodle.
I like to freeze grapes, and they're almost like a candy then.
Ooh, that's great. Yeah, they're really good for those hot summer months too, those frozen grapes, because it gives you something cold to chew on, cools you down. Does anyone have a suggestion for a grain product we could have at the picnic?
How about a pasta salad?
Pasta salad. You're inspiring people, Jean. Perfect. Okay, and what kind of protein could we have?
You have chicken.
Chicken? Okay. I'm going to suggest we do some frozen yogurt, either homemade or bought, some low-calorie frozen yogurt, popsicle type things. I love making that a dairy when I go picnicking. And then we need to remember to bring water with us. So when we're outside, we're going to be sweating more, we're going to be exerting. And so you want to bring at least about 2 cups of water per person, maybe even more, because we're going to be thirsty. And if we can choose unsweetened, flavored water, such as with basil or mint or fresh fruit, it's going to be a much healthier version for us than choosing a sweetened beverage. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to choose warm water with cucumbers. That is so good in the summer. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's think about the rest of what we need to do for our picnic. How much food should we pack? So we need to try to bring only what we're going to be needing for this meal. This decreases food waste. Leftovers left out of the cooler for more than 1 hour, if we're higher than 90 degrees Fahrenheit, will need to be discarded. So how much serving of vegetable dish will we need? We are bringing raw carrots, cucumber, and cauliflower. Can someone give me an example of how many people would be in their family on a picnic? Or actually, we have 6 participants on the call right now. Let's use that. So there's 6 people at the picnic. If we need 1 cup of raw vegetables each, how many do we need?
6 cups.
Yes, perfect. And for fruit, we did frozen grapes. That's a 1 cup serving as well. So how many cups of grapes?
6.
Yeah, I like this easy math. Okay, for this one, we're doing pasta salad. And a 1 full grain serving of pasta salad is 2/3 cup per person. So if we give 2/3 to each of our 6 picnickers, that's 4 cups of pasta salad. And we're doing chicken. So let's assume we're bringing it pre-cooked. We need about 3 ounces per person for protein. So how many ounces of chicken do we need to bring?
18.
18, thank you. And finally, we're going to bring 6 individual yogurt pops, which are 1 cup each. And then gallons of water. So we would want to bring at least 2 cups for the meal, but you may also think about bringing an extra cup of water for everyone for the before and after picnic, because again, it gets warm and we're going to need to stay hydrated. So we need about 18 cups of water packed to bring with us at this picnic. Here's some other stuff for us to consider before and while packing for our picnic. So how are you going to separate your raw and ready to eat foods? So if we had been planning to cook that chicken at the site on the grill, what's one way we could separate it from our other foods when we're transporting it?
You could put it in a sealed bowl or a sealed Ziploc bag.
Great. We also can store our shelf-stable items, like if we're bringing tortilla chips or bread products. We can bring them separate. Ooh, we also had the suggestion that we could cook food the day before if we didn't want to bring the raw product with us to the picnic. That's a great solution as well. So what's something we could put our shelf-stable picnic items in? Let's say we want to bring salt and pepper to season something at the site.
You could have a picnic basket or those reusable grocery bags.
Perfect. Using something like that to transport those shelf-stable items separate from your cooler can give you more cooler space and helps those items not get soggy. So Our next step is to figure out from our menu what dishes we should cook potentially the day before. Cooking them the day before allows us to thoroughly chill them in the refrigerator, bringing them to 40 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. So what dishes do we need to cook the day before? Our chicken, if we're doing that at home,
Pasta salad.
pasta salad. If we're making
Yep.
the yogurt pops at home, we'd need to make those beforehand. All right, anything else? We probably have to freeze the grapes.
We need to put those grapes in the freezer.
Yeah, those sound really good.
Cut up the vegetables too.
Great. So that's a great planning list for us to keep in mind when prepping for our picnic. Let's talk about what equipment we need. So for the number of plates, we need the number of people present, plus at least 2 plates for each raw item. So if I know I keep going back and forth, but if we assume that we're making the chicken on site with the grill, that's 2 plates plus our 6 participants. So we need at least 8 plates. We need the number of forks and knives for the people present, plus a few extra because things end up on the ground, or at least that's how it works at my picnics. So we would need at least 7 to 8 of each kind. Napkins, again, we need enough for everyone, plus a little extra. And then cups, we need enough for everyone, at least. Keep in mind that if you're able to store your beverages in a separate cooler, it'll keep your food cooler much colder because you won't be opening it as often. When it comes to serving utensils for the items you're cooking, you want to bring enough utensils so you have some extra in case any get dropped on the ground, and you have enough for every single dish you bring. So to allow for some extras, we can bring 2 more than we have as dishes. So we have 6 dishes planned right now. So we would need at least 8 serving utensils. And I believe all but one of those are cold. So we would need the potentially 5 different ice baths. And we are potentially cooking 1 on site. So we would need 2 different spatulas and tongs for that potential chicken on site. What's something we could disinfect? Let's talk about our cooler now. What's something we could disinfect the cooler with?
The 3 tablespoons of bleach in a gallon of water.
Perfect. If I'm pulling it out of the garage for the first time of the season, it needs to be cleaned. Okay. And
You don't want to see the fish he caught last year.
very true. So what are we going to use to cool our cooler? Are we using ice packs, frozen food, a mix? What do you want to use, Jean?
I usually end up with a mix.
Usually end up with a mix at my house.
Great. All right, now we need to decide what is going where in the cooler. So remember, we want to use the items we're going to eat first on top, the items we're going to eat last on bottom. So if we start with our fresh vegetables, where do we want to put them? Would those go on the top, middle, or bottom of our cooler?
Top.
Top. Okay, what about our frozen grapes?
Top. Or maybe, I don't know. I was thinking about snacking before you even ate, but.
No, that
maybe
makes a lot of
bottom if
sense.
we're gonna-
If you plan to eat those grapes soon after arriving, they should go on top. Okay, what about our pasta salad?
Middle.
Okay. Maybe we'll be eating that one a little bit later. And our chicken,
Middle.
okay. Now we have our dairy, which is
Bottom.
yeah. So frozen yogurt pops, that would be a great thing to put on the bottom. Okay, great. And we can also fill the bottom with something like frozen water bottles to help keep everything cold as well. And it's good practice to have an appliance thermometer in your cooler. So that's something to include as well. Okay, let's talk real fast about how to transport our foods. If you have a hot dish that you plan on eating at your picnic, you'll want to finish cooking it right before you leave and then eat it as soon as you arrive. Transport time cannot be longer than 2 hours if it's less than 90 degrees Fahrenheit in your environment, or 1 hour if it's greater than 90 degrees Fahrenheit. When you do transport it, consider transporting it wrapped in towels in a heavy box to keep it from slipping and turning over. So let's switch around the scenario one more time. If we cooked that chicken right before we left, and let's say we had a short drive, we could eat it at our picnic. Our next thing to think at is where in the car we can store it. So if someone wants to bring to their mind their personal car, where's somewhere you could fit your cooler?
Trunk.
Okay, so the trunk is an option. Many cars don't allow air conditioning in the trunk. If that's the best option you have, then it's usable. But if it's possible to fit it in an air-conditioned portion of the vehicle, it'll stay cooler.
If you put it in the back seat, you can use it as an armrest sometimes.
Ooh.
Separate rowdy children, should you be blessed with any.
Okay. And then when we get to the picnic spot, if someone wants to envision their favorite picnic space, where could you place it? To try to keep it a little bit colder.
In the shade, maybe?
In the shade, perfect. If you have trees, that's a great idea. All right, and then additionally, leave that melted ice water in the cooler. It'll help keep everything cold. When we do look to cook that chicken, if we're cooking it on site, we need to remember it needs to reach an internal minimum temperature that'll kill off those bacteria. So for chicken, that's at least 165 degrees Fahrenheit. And I could include that in my guide notes to remind me. And I use a probe thermometer to make sure. Additionally, when we're grilling, we want to take our grilled foods off and put them on a clean plate and make sure it's separate for any foods that were not ready to eat food or not becoming contaminated with raw meat products such as fruits, buns, vegetables, and other side dishes. Down here at the bottom of the guide, there's our clean, separate, cook, and chill tools. I recommend, once you get this, to go ahead. All right. I'll go ahead and you can go ahead and cut that off and put that on your cooler as a reminder. All right. Thank you for joining us today. I'll be sending you a follow-up email in which you'll have the opportunity to look at the guide we just looked through together. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and send them back to me. It's been really great to have you on today, and I hope to see you later this week.